get the leather bound chair.
Makes him officially more important.
Let me try and find logging on to the guest network and see if it does something.
Do we get an award for more people?
Courses.
Is there an award?
Participation award, gold
If we
stars.
play baseball, you have more for your
There's
team.
rules against more people on one team.
You know, I don't know, I think we get to count the camera
David, we're counting you. David, we're counting you.
No, just so everyone knows, I realized that there are exemptions. We didn't want your images to be recorded on video to be put online, so only the audio will be put online to protect your privacy.
But there will be a video.
There, well,
For the county, yes, sir.
as a record, but it's not, it could not be disclosed as a public record, is what I'm saying. Because there are exemptions for your image
And
as a
most of our images
firefighter.
are copyrighted too. Like,
This
we're
is just
gonna be
for
actually legally correct about these terms.
purposes of
The
review
board,
or?
the board directed that all of the
What's
collective
each guy's
bargaining be
chairs?
recorded and then be put on the county's website for viewing, so.
We've always recorded, both sides have always audio recorded.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to be clear that only the audio would be
That's
published.
fine. I'd rather.
Kristen?
Yes, I'm Kristen Huell.
Nick, it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
All right, well, welcome, everybody. We're glad to be back at the table. We have a sign-in sheet that I'll pass around. But, maybe what we should do, while the sign-in sheet's is being passed around, is go around the room and introduce ourselves so that, everybody knows who everybody else is.
I think we should start with Peanut Gallery.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
It's
Yes.
stellar
The removable.
nickname, man.
Daniel Ackerman, concerned citizen, just an observer.
Welcome.
Nikki Powell, Clerk of Court Payroll.
Lorraine Hudson, Clerk of Court Payroll.
Paulette Stallworth, Human Resources.
Janice Gilly, County.
I'm Mike Banamore, and I don't have anything to say after my name, so.
Super Attorney, Kristen Huell, County Attorney's Office.
Paul Williams, Fire Rescue County.
John Dosh, Interim Public Safety Director.
Joseph Markham, Local 4131 Secretary.
Scott Hunsucker, 4131 Treasurer.
Just in case.
Nick Grady, 4131 President.
Andrew Raznick, 4131.
Dan Brass, 4131.
Scott April, 4131 Vice President.
Dimitri Ganson, 4131.
All right, great. It's been a while since we've been in a bargaining session. It's been a while. And there's some new people involved in the process that have not had the benefit of being in negotiations between the county and the National Association of Firefighters before today. So, I know that I was involved in some bargaining sessions, maybe 2018, that had to do with pay. Is that right?
You were here for some of them.
And then there was some that happened after.
You had a few,
without
and
pay.
then one of your colleagues came in for a couple,
Okay.
and then you came back after a long break, and then we had a very, very long break, and
Yeah.
here we are.
Good, okay, good. Well, I know that there were some things that were talked about. We might have to talk about them again, just because
Sure.
there's people who have not had the benefit of hearing that, with those conversations we had in 2018 before the long break.
Yes, sir.
So, I guess we have a full book. At some point today, what the county did is the county sat down and crafted a full contract prototype with changes that they would like to see. Obviously, we'd like to hear at some point today, or maybe it'll happen after you've had an opportunity to look through it, to see what your responses are, whether you like them, whether you don't like them, whether you want to make different changes. So we all, on this side of the table, understand what the collective bargaining process entails and what our obligations are. And we're here with an open mind. So, if you, I didn't want to hijack the meeting, so Nick,
Oh, sure.
wherever you want to go.
I agree with you completely. I think it's important because we never really finished the last process. So I think it's important with all the new players to just run through and review, because we had some completed actual MOUs, and then we had some tentative agreements that were signed as well. So I thought it was important to at least review those, and if there were any questions along the way, we can touch on those things. And then there were several that were just still open.
Right.
Obviously, ones that had a financial impact throughout last year were left open.
Right.
But that was my desire, to review what was
Okay.
finished and executed, or at least, we had enough agreement to sign. Then look at the open proposals and.
Good.
Kinda
So we have some, we obviously have in our possession some,
A pay offer.
we have a pay offer. We gave you a pay offer, I thought.
Oh, the COLA?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's different. That's different.
Well, anyway, that's there. I don't know if you have a response.
I do have a copy of that with me too.
Okay, good. So, now we have uncovered a couple articles that were TA'd in that round before the break.
Well, and I didn't know what may have been, if something wasn't passed along to you, or because I know you weren't here for all the sessions either, I don't believe. So if anything was, lost in translation, if you weren't here, or,
It may have.
kind of in the
been.
transition, that's what I wanted to review and make sure we're
Well,
all on the same
why don't you, if you don't mind, Nick, why don't you tell us what you think has been resolved for the purpose of these negotiations and what the thought was behind the
Okay.
change?
I may have 5 copies of each, so. For those who want to see this one. This was an MOU for the 14-day pay cycle. Clarified hours of work. And this, like I said, was a completed MOU, and we've been operating by this standard since then.
So that's already in place.
Yes, sir.
It's a better
And,
version.
as, if we're gonna redraft as we move through the contract, I think it should go into Article 10. Under 10.08, it would essentially replace the little brief line that's under pay cycle, and it's where that would fit in ultimately.
I'm sorry, you said Article 10?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And this just specifies, in the past, we've had issues with, obviously the way we work, our hours can be a little unusual for some folks. So we've had some issues, as we change out personnel that draft payroll, how they translate the information from us down to you guys at payroll. And we just wanted to really spell it out so it's clear, it's a nice, easy thing to follow.
She went to make more copies for her.
Oh, okay. I thought we had our first walkout.
10 minutes in, jumping ship.
I did find this among the documents that I received, and I made my best effort to incorporate those terms into the proposal.
What article is
it-
that?
10.
10.
It's not verbatim, but,
Just
The
why wouldn't it
intent
be
is the
verbatim?
same.
Out of curiosity.
well,
You just think you captured it with less language?
I do, but we can certainly discuss that.
Okay, no problem.
I think we have the same intent.
Okay. And that's the thing, before, it seems like that's what happened. We have the intent, and we'll come to an understanding with, with administration, with the personnel that are, doing the payroll themselves. and then we get a new person in or something, and they read it a little differently, or and we just had conflicts with that. When you're dealing with processing a paycheck, that's kind of a bad time to have
And
questions.
it goes back to 2013.
Yeah.
That's how, that was an MOU that was derived out of the very first contract, and that was actually, there is emails associated with that talk about that being a signed MOU, but
Because I think that, I don't know.
My concern is that there are some language in the contract we can sit at the table, and we may agree that less words is, we understand the intent of this. And what we've seen is there's so much turnover in the county that things get misconstrued very easily. So unfortunately, there are some things that we kind of want it to be wordy and just very definitive, just so that we hold on to the clarity of it.
Is the, but as a result of this memorandum, on November 14, 2018, there was no change?
Not to necessarily the way we had already been operating.
Okay.
However, if a question were to come up about how to calculate pay, hours of work, so on and so forth, like to specifically list of FLSA kicks in at 106 hours or following 106 hours of work, things like that. If a person had leave within their cycle, leave and overtime, they still exceed the hours worked of 106, and the way the law reads it, how those things are applied.
Okay, good. Well, we're gonna get around to giving you this whole contract.
Sure.
And so,
And
if you feel that additional or different language needs to be in the contract, then you'll give it back to us. As a
No problem.
Okay, so that's 14-day pay cycle overtime calculation issue. I don't think there's a dispute there. What do you want to do next then?
The next one is an MOU for supplemental pay. And this was actually a request of administration at the time.
Those two extra ones.
Initially, when the change was made for the EMT and paramedic pay, it was actually changed for the paramedic pay, but at the time, financial constraints, what have you, administration requested that we put limitations on EMT pay. And I had add language that said anyone hired must have EMT coming in. After, I believe, a good year or so, it was realized that that was an issue. We were having problems with recruitment because of people with fire and EMT. So that was a request of administration just to strike that language, that requirement. So we did that, and you can see the rest. And my understanding, Chief, is we again, this is an MOU. We've been operating under this standard since January of 18.
Okay.
I was also aware of this, and we have a proposal in the contract that addresses that.
Okay.
All right, the next one was, this one was callback pay. This one will need to be cleaned up. This was one towards the end, well, actually, I believe maybe our last meeting that we had together. Frankly, this is where some of the frustrations were starting to set in. Of make an offer, we talk about something at the table, we are in agreement, we draft language and return with it, and the counter is brought back with change. So that's the reason for the handwritten notes here. And these notes, as you can see, were signed off by Eric Kleiner and myself. It's just an amendment of language that would fall in what's written up here. And again, I know this may seem extremely wordy, but we've encountered situations specifically relating to this, or disputes on pay and how you accumulate hours, things like that.
This might not be the current practice because this is a TA and not a MOU.
Well, this was June of last year.
Did it go into effect?
As far as I know, the original language captured the majority of it, where we were running into some issues. Again, the underlying portion that was added in were just to capture some of the unique situations that had occurred.
Okay.
And I don't believe we've had any disputes since then. I want to say this is what we've been doing, but we haven't had any issues.
Okay.
Part of this was timing with the clinic. You schedule an appointment, you go down, and they would end up being there for 3 to 4 hours. And it's a very rare occurrence, but it would happen, and the person's like, I'm getting paid for my 2 hours, but then I'm here for 3 or 4. This is not really okay. So there was that question of, well, we only have to pay you for 2, but I was there for 4. So I think some of that got addressed with the clinic, and they kind of made some changes. And
You go to the front of the line?
Ma'am?
You go to the front of the line now?
Well, no, I mean, it's just maybe schedule a little more efficiently.
Okay.
But I think they kind of cleaned up a little bit on their end. It's been more efficient, so.
Okay, good.
All right. Classification pay. Here you go.
So did we decide that this was a TA versus an MOU?
That is a TA.
Mhm. Okay, that's what I thought.
Again, this was just, had to add some more words to clarify some things as far as issues we're running into operationally. No, I don't think any ill intent on administration's part. It just, they stick to the letter of the law, but we know what the intention should be in administration and us have agreed. Just clarifying some things. And we have been operating by this practice.
Okay.
This was just a simple thing, employee assistance program. This was just really a request on our behalf to add kind of a fact sheet or something, maybe something that HR could put together, just so we could add to the back of our contract as an appendix. That would be a good resource for our members if they wanted to research EAP, something like that. It's very common, our members, when they have a question about something, that's their immediate reference is the contract. So we felt like it would be beneficial. Sometimes I think the folks feel like they're navigating the county website. Not that it's difficult to navigate, but sometimes you're not familiar with it, and they, for them, they'd rather just go to that paper document and look. And again, this was a TA, so it wasn't. It hasn't been. This hasn't been added.
Right. Well, right. Until we have a new agreement, we won't have a new appendix, so.
Well, I mean, there hadn't been a draft or anything offered of, hey, does this meet what you guys are looking for or anything like that. And finally, would be relating to uniforms. Now, obviously, this hasn't officially been implemented, but I know that planning on administration's behalf has been geared around this for a number of reasons, and as of especially recent passing of the cancer legislation really reinforces the need for it. But the push was to issue, make sure each bargaining unit member has a full secondary set of PPE. And there's a number of reasons why that's a major health consideration, longevity, the employee. I personally think it's fiscally responsible. I mean, I think you extend the life of gear by being able to rotate, properly clean your gear when need be and all that. So there's that one. And that's all I have as far as what was either MOUs or TAs that were actually signed.
Okay.
Unresolved, if you want to look through those, things that were offered or opened, that were discussed. sorry I didn't make a bunch of copies of these, but I didn't know.
Why don't you just tell us what they are?
Okay. We had offered her a change to the annual leave accrual. I think it was just a quick bump. Some of these are, have tenths of hours in them and the accumulation and all that. So we more or less just kind of rounded up,
So
made it simple.
I'm gonna reflect back the issue. It's a request for a modest increase in annual leave.
That's correct. Comp leave was something we went back and forth on quite a bit, and we actually have, this was another kind of frustrating one. We reached an MOU to get to the point of MOU. This was one that language was offered and discussed at the table and agreed upon, and okay, well, we'll draft this up, bring it back next round, and when it was brought back, we changed the number of hours again, and it was just kind of take it or leave it. So it's not what we agreed on.
For the people that are new to the table, Nick, tell me what is comp leave and what's the
Okay, so the way our comp leave currently works, whatever we accrue, and the only way we were able to accrue it is by working overtime and converting those hours to comp leave. But unfortunately, unlike the sheriff's office or other entities, we can't roll that leave over and acquire a bank or anything. We can accrue I believe it's per the FLSA, we're allowed to accrue up to 480 hours, which is extremely nice. But it's a use or payout within the same fiscal year. So we recognize and understand that for obvious reason, there's a monetary thing there. If I bank 480 hours and I hold on to it for 20 years, it's obviously worth an exponential amount of money. Yeah. So, and we understand that concern, but we also recognize that due to our, initially like this leave was not even really considered. So, all right, we recognize the importance of. We don't feel like we accrue very much leave at all. So we feel like it's a significant benefit. So our request and intent was continue with the same process that we have. Whatever you accrue within the first year, if you were going to do a payout, then you must elect to do that. Whatever's accrued within that fiscal year, those hours, you can pay those out. If you elect to bank them, so when your deadline comes around, you say, all right, I've accrued 200 hours of comp this year. My election is to bank it. It gets banked. It can't ever be cashed in again. It can only be used for leave purposes. That's it. We felt like that was a reasonable compromise that would afford us the opportunity to actually utilize the accrual limit that's set forth by FLSA. And it may sound kind of complex, but it's really not too difficult because we already operate under a process where by a certain day you have to elect whether to use or do a buyout for the leave you've accrued that year. It's not hard to track what was accrued or separate the two. And again, if you elect.
This is FLSA comp.
Yes, sir.
And so.
And I understand FLSA is specific on as far as how it's, pay out, those type of things. However, if we stipulate in the contract, different parameters and.
Well, and I don't know, you might know the answer to this. This is just my concern. Let's say, if I understand the process correctly, you are at the, you can't use FLSA comp. The deadline to use it comes up. You don't want to get paid out. You want to roll some part of it over, up to 200 hours, and bank that to use that. And you're going to put into the contract that if those rolled over banked hours are not used, then they're lost. They don't get paid out.
Not lost, that they bank. They get to hold those hours and they can use them in the future.
For time off.
Solely for leave
Okay.
purposes only.
Solely for leave purposes.
They cannot be paid out for them.
What happens if somebody leaves? Let's say, what if somebody rolls over 200 hours?
I would say it's a loss.
Yeah, see, the only concern I have is I think under the Fair Labor Standards Act,
Yeah.
we can't do that.
I agree.
We have to pay you out.
Yep,
I don't think you can waive your right to overtime.
Because there are hours worked.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's a legal obligation.
Well, at the same time, if a person is leaving, generally people are
Yeah,
gonna
but
fill
this
those
is-
banks up
Yeah,
when
no.
they're ready to leave anyway. And if it's a situation of termination, then they would forfeit that accrual anyway, correct?
No. No, because FLSA comp is like just delayed overtime. You see what I'm saying? So, I mean, so let's say somebody rolled. I'm just saying, I'm not quarreling with the attempt to, have the leave available to you, but I think legally I don't know if we can do that.
I'm sorry?
I don't think legally we can agree that we're waiving the
No.
payment.
No, I think FLSA comp leave has to be paid out or used up per fiscal year, period. It's compensation.
I don't know if it has to be paid out per
Per
No,
year.
it doesn't have to be paid out.
It has
per
to be
year,
paid
but-
out
But it has to be paid
at
out.
the end of the day.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Okay, well-
Because it's time worked.
Right.
Sure.
I don't think we
But
can
that-
agree with you that you can't get a payout.
Okay.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Does it have to be paid out at time and a half?
It's going in at time and a half and
Yeah.
paid out at
Yeah.
straight time.
Yeah, it's going in it
It's already going in
Uh-huh.
at this time and a half.
because it's overtime.
Okay.
It's just,
It's-
there's a legal wrinkle to this, that's all.
Okay.
Well, let's think about it.
Well, we get a chance, let's, the only hangup that we had, let's see, let me try to understand this. Okay. What we offered, we had the same debate back and forth. I believe we got down to an offer of rolling over 120 hours,
Okay.
which was agreed upon, and then he came back with low ball on sign day. So that's where
What do
we,
you come back with?
48 hours.
Okay.
So that's where we're at with that. And
I'll be candid with you. The rollover is not the problem.
Sure, I understand the financial liability that's there. I
Well, the
understand that.
rollover is not the problem. The obligation to use and not get paid out is the problem.
Mhm. Well, if that's illegal, we can't, you can't, you have to follow the law and you have to pay that time out. Okay, then it means that there is a financial liability there. Understood?
It's okay, I mean,
But we'd still like to discuss it and see if it's an option to be able to do that, because I really think that the vast majority of our personnel use this as a lead bank, not a cash out.
I'm just bringing it up while we're on the topic.
Sure.
I'm not telling you what our position is on this.
Okay.
You know, so if you want to, I think I understand your request. You thought there was some,
I would like to explore the option or come to some form of resolution where an employee has the option to roll some of their comp hours over,
got it.
rather than just use or lose. Because typically what ends up happening is everyone with a bank that's comp some time throughout the year, that deadline approaches, and then you have a mass vacation period that takes place throughout August, September, which at the end of the fiscal year, when money's already tight, has a more of a significant impact. It's kind of uh-oh mode. And if it affects operations too severely, then the leave is denied. Well, then the employee has no choice, which is not the intent. You know, they should have the option of what to do with their leave or time.
Yeah.
So that was the reason for this. One of the reasons we were looking to allow some type of a rollover to happen.
Right. Right.
But y'all, talk about it and, you know.
I thought FLSA required you to either use it within 26 pay periods or the employer's required to pay it out at the overtime rate. That's my understanding of FLSA.
And we got a ton of fire departments that are operating outside of that, with just even the state of
Payroll could weigh
Florida.
in on that.
How does the sheriff's office do that?
I know
then?
my brother,
I know they're
when he went
different,
out,
but
But I'm not an expert
500
on
or 600
FLSA, but
hours.
that's my
I think
understanding.
it's how
What's that?
I think it's
Rather
more
have
based on
500
budget
hours
than
comp
it
time
is
for
on
the
it,
sheriff's
let's say
office.
about the payout.
And it was rolled over.
And you can only approve
Right.
to 480.
480.
And the overtime rate, which is actually 160 or 320 hours actually work.
Depending if it's all over time and a half.
Right.
I'm sorry.
If your comp time is, if it's at time and a half.
I think we understand the concern. The concern is that we get toward the end of the fiscal year and people who have leave balances in excess of what they can roll over or and use or subject to being paid out immediately. Everyone is trying to take leave in the same time period.
And we've seen varying circumstances. We've seen situations where it's a younger individual, they haven't accrued very much leave, and they're expecting a child in December, November, January, something like that, and leave becomes an issue. This would be another option that a responsible person says, okay, I'm gonna work some overtime, and they either make additional money to prepare or they bank leave to prepare for their situations. No vacation time, things like that. We've seen varying situations occur throughout the years, and we felt like this would obviously be a benefit to the employee as an additional option, but we also feel like it could help administration as well as far as department management overall, because we see that big lump of leave attempted to be taken in August, September timeframe.
Okay. I understand. Does anybody have any questions about this?
I'm good.
Okay. Thanks, Nick. What's next?
Qualifications for lieutenants. Excuse me. This was another one that kind of threw me for a loop. We were seeking, initially, we were seeking language, just an additional requirement, if you will. This was it. The language that we added, if you look, qualification was lieutenant, what's listed, currently has a minimum of 5 years continuous employment as a full-time firefighter with ECFR. Just the little bit we added was must have completed the required training for driver operator as defined by the ECFR training division, and must have performed the duties of an active driver operator for a minimum of 2 years. It was just a really simple change. It was a change based on, again, a few years' time passing by, kind of seeing potentially what could happen is you have an individual promoted into the position of a company officer, and they've never operated as a driver. They've never formally learned and trained and operated how to drive an apparatus or anything like that. But it's one of the duties of a lieutenant to train drivers. It's not really okay that if you've never done the job to be training someone else to do the job. So we felt like that was a little bit of a flaw there, a loophole in the system, so we wanted to correct that language. Shortly after that, through labor management discussions with Chief Nail and Chief Williams, the intent was to try to install driver positions and actually make it a promotable rank. And we had some discussion back and forth, and I have this a little later in here actually. We made a proposal for the position itself. It was actually, I think, the first time we sat down and talked about it, and it was the desire of the operations side of the house that, no, it's more appropriate for that to be a promotable position, make it an actual rank. So that was the intent. But it was also one of those things that just never it's like, yeah, we're in agreement, let's look at it, but never move forward on it.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that in the proposal, we've addressed at least the requirement of a lieutenant needing, because, so this is the
What was
firefighter
confusing,
qualification. and that
I guess what
would be
confused
this,
me
so then
when it
they would
came
have
time to
go to
there
lieutenant.
was a
Yes, but
tentative
it's not
agreement
what they're
prepared
looking
It's
for.
not.
They're
brought
looking
back.
for somebody to actually have.
For some reason,
Been a driver.
Kleiner changed it from the 5-year requirement to 2 years of continuous employment, which was 100% not what we were after at all, and not the way we've been operating in the past. He changed the years in there and reduced them significantly, and
Years to be
the
lieutenant?
years
Yeah.
required to promote, yes. And I know it's kind of where did this come from? And he really didn't give us an answer. Okay, maybe something was discussed outside. And I remember speaking with Chief Nell about that. I'm like, is that something you wanted to do, or no, not at all? So I don't know. I don't know what the intent was. but the requirement, that 5 year of continuous employment as a full-time firefighter is, we feel, very significant and important. That's the way we've been operating, it's the way we've been testing. But we felt it was important to add that little stipulation in about the driving requirement. Even if you don't institute an official driver's position, make it a new position, there's still, essentially a stipulation on how we operate, to signify that a person's a driver.
Okay.
So.
Does anybody have any questions about that? You understand that issue? Okay. 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 So some of these things that you're bringing up are not going to be reflected in here,
Sure.
because we're going through them now.
Do you have anything on shift exchange?
Shift exchange.
I do have a draft. It's not in there.
Okay.
I do.
You do?
I do.
Okay. This was another one that was back and forth on this.
Right.
It was hard to come to terms. There was another tentative agreement prepared off of communication, and game day presentation was different, and we never came back to it after that. So, the shift swaps are something that we are afforded the opportunity to do. That's where essentially I, literally like it sounds, I agree to work for him, he works for me, situation. It is one of the things that is not expressly defined with a lot of rules in the contract. Frankly, we police ourselves in that matter. And I feel like we've done a very good job of that. It's a massive benefit to both the employee and the county financially.
I do not have a copy of something that may have been drafted in the past on shift exchange. I don't know, did we?
I have some drafts.
One
But-
thing we wanted to add, to, again, just be clear on, the wording of shift swaps now, or if you research it, the way it would work is, if Raznick works for me, and it comes my time to pay him back, I don't show up that day. Sick leave is charged, but it's charged to him. Well, frankly, I think that's wrong. It's not right to him. He did the responsible thing. He scheduled the time, and now he's on vacation down in Disney World. And hey, Grady, it didn't show up today. Hey, man, I'm sorry. They added extra day of snapper season. I had to get out there. My bad. That's not his fault. That's not right. But with the way the language is written, that's the way it's conducted. So there's a paragraph at the bottom here, and I'll feel free to look this over. Other than what's circled right here, this is where the disagreement is, and what's circled over here is a disagreement. But the paragraph at the bottom was language that we were trying to capture and put in, and we felt like that was as much needs to be in there.
All right.
And we actually asked, I want to say we talked to you about this. There was a concern, I think, initially, I don't remember who posed it, but would this be a problem?
Manual deduction of sick leave?
Yes, ma'am. And yeah, so it was really as simple as when timesheets are done, you would just notate that, deduct 24 hours of sick from this person, and then they would know what to do.
Okay, that's not reflected in the proposal, but it's something that we can consider if you
Sure.
want to counter with it.
Yeah. So we have it the way it is now. But if you want to change that, you can counter it.
Is this, where's that one I gave you?
I think it's the same. Do you guys, as the county, acknowledge the fact that us freely being able to use shift swaps and police ourselves saves the county a significant amount of money every year? And by limiting that, so this isn't, you're taking a practice that wasn't in writing, and we're now putting it in writing, but we're altering it in a way that had negligible potential for financial impact to the county. And now you've put a large financial impact to the county. Because here's the deal. If I start hitting some of these limits and restrictions that are in here, and I want off, I'm gonna take off. I'll call out sick, plain and simple. Now you're having to pay overtime, where I could have just called Nick and said, hey, Nick, can you work a swap for me on Saturday? Yeah, man, I got you, no problem. Now it costs the county $0. But instead, you're now paying someone at time and a half. And I think that's where there was a disconnect when we were having this conversation with other individuals. And there was just a bit of a roadblock there. So there's a huge financial impact when we start putting a lot of restrictions on shift swaps.
We also see very commonly that morning of a shift, say a kid gets sick or kid misses the bus, and a guy's supposed to be coming in, pick up the phone, hey man, can we work a quick swap out? Can you hold for me until 9 or 10 or something like that? Yeah, no problem. In our culture, we do that. We look out for each other versus, hey chief, I'm sorry, I need 2 hours of sick this morning. I got to get my kid to school and all this kind of stuff, yada, yada, yada. Okay, fine. Hey, is anybody willing to hold over for a couple hours? No, man, I got to get home. My kid's got a doctor's appointment. I got to go take my kid to school or something like that. That happens. And don't get me wrong, people may hold over or pick up that overtime, but it's in my opinion, much more successful that hey, can we work out a quick swap or something? Or, hey, why don't you just come in later this afternoon, I'll work for you until 9 o'clock, or 4 or 5 o'clock or something. And that exchange happens. And it's, again, the continuity, the reason that that's significant is so the continuity of operations maintains.
Okay, so you're talking about
Just,
the
I mean, at a
aspect
glance
of it-
here, partial shift exchange may not be exchanged. I think that's a hard no for us, for sure.
And then the third bullet point.
Just asking here real quick, a written request formed and signed by both the employee and their immediate supervisor. Okay, so if I'm doing a swap, my immediate supervisor is a battalion chief. If the fireman's doing a swap, one of my firemen are doing a swap, then I'm his immediate supervisor. So does that mean a lieutenant is allowed to, will be authorizing swaps? And if that's the case, I don't think it's necessary, frankly. It's very common
That opens
practice.
the door to a lot of other problems.
It absolutely does. And it is already common practice, shift swaps. Again, you have those emergency situations like the examples I gave a few minutes ago, but typically when a swap is agreed upon, it's scheduled out in advance. The supervisor, your immediate supervisor, is typically told about it. If they're effective communicators with their crew is telling them that that's what's going on. Hey, I got a swap coming up in a couple weeks or whatever the case is. Part of that supervisor's responsibility is to understand continuity of operations. Maybe I only have one driver on my crew and he's the person that's doing a swap, and he's swapped with another fireman who's not a driver operator. So then I would call the BC and say, hey, listen, here's what's going on. And it's just effective communication allows it to carry on and continue. And I mean, feel free to jump in, Chief Williams, if you've seen significant issues with this. But again, when I asked last round, show me a problem where we've had a problem and nothing was offered. The only concern that has been presented in the past is if swap hours, a large amount of swap hours are accumulated and an employee decides to leave. That's time, that's where you get back into the law and all that. Again, we've policed ourselves and we make sure that time is paid back, and we haven't had a problem. Not one person who's left has went down to payroll and said, I've got 300 hours of swap time, you gotta pay me right now.
All right, tell me about this. Who drafted this up?
Not you, but
The county.
I believe so.
Here, take a look.
where did that one come from?
I don't know, somebody
It's
just handed it to
the
me.
same thing that you handed us. It's just a copy.
Right. So,
I think it's the same.
Well, you're reading that, I got a couple questions if that's.
yeah, please.
Sure.
So in the second bullet point, can you define or explain job classification? So are you talking about rank in that?
Which one, I'm sorry?
The second bullet point, job classification, must hold the same job classification. So are we talking about lieutenant firefighter? So I could not work for a firefighter.
Right.
What if that firefighter were cleared to act? And furthermore, hazmat, special ops, paramedic, EMT, all of that could be summed up within job classification. And then a guy like me, it's going to be nearly impossible to find someone to swap for that fills every role I play in the county.
Well, and then,
Yours falls under additional qualifications like
Where
paramedic,
he
But
may
we've had
change-
others-
driver, or hazmat, or whatever the
Where he made
particular
changes.
thing is.
The 72 hours in advance, the request. That was something he changed on us day of.
So you didn't agree with that?
There were two things that were manipulated after there was agreement, verbal agreement at the table. So
72 hours?
some of this other stuff, request may be denied if an exchange will interfere with the efficient operation of the department, or if a member's had their, that privilege suspended. We can concede to that as far as making a request. Really, in my opinion, that's notification of the battalion chief that's on duty that day, because he is ultimately charged with the overall management operation. Anyway.
Okay.
And we think that's okay, because, I mean, frankly, if you say, hey, I want to do a swap with so-and-so, nope, can't do it. Is there a reason why? We're the exact same rank, we have the same qualifications, I mean, there's not, I just don't really like that individual. No, we can't do that, obviously, so, we felt that was okay, but the 72-hour thing is going to be an issue, because it gets rid of the, again, that out at Perdido Key, a guy's, needs a few hours off the first part of the shift for an emergency situation. You're not going to get somebody to pick up 3 hours of overtime at Perdido Key. So that's an issue there.
Okay. So if, I'm not sure, that document I handed back to you, Nick, that's there?
This discussion, last time we had this, when
Yeah.
he presented it,
Yeah.
I think it was one of the last times we met, and it was in Chief Nail's office.
Yeah.
When there was just,
So this
when this
wasn't a
happened-
formal bargaining session?
No, it was a formal bargaining.
It was?
Yeah, okay. I'm just trying to,
So
I'm just
we didn't get to
I'm
really
just trying
discuss
to tie down what it is you want changed or not changed about.
Basically, that we
Well,
can
let me-
do shift swaps freely as we
Can I
Get my
have.
copy?
Yeah, can I have that back?
Because see, here's an even better example with this job classification stuff. We had a gentleman, his mother suddenly passed away from suicide. He was a relatively new employee, didn't have a lot of hours on the books. I ended up working for him so he could go back home to Chicago to deal with the family matters that he had to, because he was basically the designated one to handle all of that. So to save his leave, because he was going to continue and life happens, I stepped up and worked for him. I never asked to be paid back. That was a favor I did for him. We do that quite a bit. This 90-day rule, it's the last one, kind of falls into a lot of this same type of deal. We have a gentleman right now whose wife has breast cancer. She found out she was pregnant, or she found out she had breast cancer while she was pregnant. They had to take the baby early. We got guys now working for him because they don't really need money and all this other stuff. He needs to be home with his 2 kids, his brand-new baby, and his wife who's going through chemo. And that's how we can step up and help him. So restricting this 90-day thing, you're hurting a lot of people.
Okay, 72-hour, I'm just trying to identify the concerns. 72 hours advance notice is one. 90-day completion is another.
The partial shifts,
Partial shifts.
job classification, and then who is penalized if,
I'm
The
good even with
agreeing
the job
parties.
classification, as, that it must be approved. I mean, I think that's fair, because frankly, that occurs anyway, if there's a situation. If it's an actor that's gonna end up being in, it's discussed anyway.
Okay. And the person that you want to lose leave, if there's a no-show, is the person who has agreed to come in, not the person who was scheduled to be there in the first place.
That's correct. The
Correct.
person who, yes, we just wanted to correct that language about who's charged.
I think we understand the issues of shift exceeds.
So,
Any questions?
This, when we get through some of this,
Grady.
Probationary period.
oh, yes,
yeah, let's,
and that one.
I'm gonna just suggest maybe we just take a break in a little bit, and
Yeah,
and
sure.
we'll discuss this specifically and try to come back with like a,
Okay,
where we're good at.
good. Okay, what's next? Let's go on.
I did have a question if I could real quick.
Yeah,
on the-
please.
On the, if a person did show up that said he would be there to do the shift swap, the leave is not being charged to the person that should have been working, who is it charged to?
The person who was supposed to show up, because it's
Okay.
documented in Telestaff, it's
The
agreed
piece-
upon. They know, they can't play this, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to be there that day. It's documented in Telestaff, we know who's responsible for it.
So
And
you've got, he'll take leave, then you're gonna have to give an overtime person to fill that slot, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
So you're back
Or
in the same
person
boat.
Six
Or
in
you don't get
anyway,
anybody.
you know, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so make sure I understood that.
Good.
I was just, are there any recommended changes to discipline in your version? If you don't see the need to make any changes, then I just assume move on and not relive that cluster from the past.
Well, we may have to relive that a bit.
Okay.
Let's see, Article 6. There weren't really any substantive changes other than to the grid that was previously included in that article.
Currently
And
included in the article.
There were,
I think the county proposed to take the grid out altogether, is that right?
At one point, and then it.
The first offer
came
was,
back.
yeah, the whole thing,
Right.
and then it was just,
I understand,
all but like the first three portions.
right. So we have a reference in the discipline article in this whole contract that references an Appendix C. And Appendix C is the infraction category reference code that currently exists, but it's the first of the
In
columns.
what, where's that from? County policy?
it's the same that was in the old contract. It's just
Okay.
without the recommended disciplinary actions and the progressive discipline.
So you wanna remove it from the article and move it to an appendix?
And take
Right,
out the
which, to
recommendation.
be honest, I would be fine with inserting it. However, I can't find that document anywhere,
You don't
and
have to,
so.
it's right here.
No. I mean, in a Word format that I can insert into the document that I created, because I had to recreate the
Oh,
entire
I'm
collective
sorry.
bargaining agreement. So it was easier for me to scan the PDF
Sure.
and just attach it as an exhibit, but it's the same.
Were there proposed changes to the
To the
grid?
codes, no. Other than the columns that had the recommended disciplinary action included.
So
So,
you- So you had
columns.
changes to the
Right.
actual recommendations themselves?
no,
There's
they're
no
gone.
recommendations.
Yeah, they
No,
took
we took
all
those
that
3
out.
columns out.
First, second, first,
So the,
third, fourth, fifth,
the
they took all
the
that out.
violations and the codes,
So then who makes the ultimate decision on the severity of discipline?
it's based
and
on
here's-
the progressive plan unless
If you
it's.
remove
They're
the
only
defined
recommended
progressive
anyway.
plan,
It's all discretionary.
we've operated off of this since day one.
Well,
And while I understand, Mr. Kleiner's proposal as far as, his concern was more in the ethics category, which was understood, because he felt like there could be a situation where, a situation so
Egregious.
grossly or egregious that
I see
it
that.
didn't warrant a written reprimand as a
Right.
first offense.
Right.
And that's perfectly fine, because in the written language of the contract, it says in those instances, the ultimate authority resides with the county administrator.
Doesn't exactly
A
say that.
change, it absolutely says that.
where? Show me.
I believe it's
Okay.
J under that.
Okay.
They'll look it up real quick. We've also changed the way we've operated, whereas if there's any,
I believe it's that.
really any ethical question about a situation, my understanding is Chief Williams immediately sends it down to HR for review, for further review. That was an issue before, is just, if something was handled, by fire administration, was it handled appropriately? Could it be construed that they didn't levy the appropriate discipline? So if there was something that qualified or even had a hint of an ethics issue, was not clear and concise, down the line, it's processed up, others are brought in to review the situation. And I don't feel like that's been an issue. Where the matrix is incredibly important is in situations really like day-to-day operations, as in, guy comes in late, shows up late to work or something like that, or minor, insubordination infractions or things along those lines. It's a defined guideline to follow to ensure that discipline is fair and equal across the board.
So I guess why, I heard a bit of what you're saying. You feel the county, the verbiage of the county versus county administrator are two different things. Okay, I'll give you that to a degree. The county administrator ultimately runs the county and makes the decisions, so we can split hairs on that.
I'll fall on this as past practice. It absolutely resides with the county administrator, because the employee we had that was originally terminated for an offense, when it was his first offense, came from the county administrator, because he felt that the accusations were so egregious that it warranted termination. That was his decision. He didn't care about that matrix or anything like that. And if we wanted to fight it, we would have had to go through that whole process. So it's already been proven. She's the boss.
I mean, there's not a ton of stuff out there that gives line supervisors and all the way up to the fire chief's position with some of these, a lot of guidance. This is a really good document. And at the end of the day, in multiple places, in J, which is great language for you guys, at the top of the matrix, it's recommended guidelines. Everyone acknowledges that. So, the argument really from Kleiner was trying to protect the county's interests with things and have them to have the ultimate authority. You do. In writing and in past practice, you've proven it.
And again, this was a circumstance where we were debating back and forth with the former HR director. And I said, can you provide an example where the existing language would not protect the county? He could not provide an example. He tried to throw a wild curveball, but again, it falls back to there are protections in here. We agree. This was actually the county's original proposal. All this discipline language was their original stuff. And we just captured, we recognized the importance of having this matrix early on in the initial contract, so we captured it. And then, shortly after that, the county
in
removed
reality,
it
the
completely.
county wanted this matrix in the original contract.
Yes.
If we were to go back and really discuss it, we didn't want a matrix at all, because there were some instances here where we didn't agree with some of the language. And so this is really a county document. And this was the county policy directly out of the Human Resources
You are
Manual at
correct.
the time,
It was.
100%.
It was.
And so this was something that at the time was very important to the organization and allowed us to, and we recognize that through the use of it, how important it was. Actually removing this is probably more of a problem for the county long-term than not having this for all employees. But that's separate from, unfortunately, it's
again,
separate. That's a
I'll
whole
come down
other
to,
county issue, but for us, it's an important.
Simple forms of discipline. I'm a company officer. Say one of my personnel does something, and there's a write-up for that. And this is my go-to person. This is my one I can count on. But he made a mistake, and there has to be documentation. So I help him out and I only do a letter of counseling, because I don't feel like it was that. It's the first time he came to me, he didn't notify anybody, so all right, we'll just do that. Another company officer sees that that's a much more severe infraction, because he feels more strongly about it, or maybe it's a newer employee, and he's trying to teach that person a lesson or something like that. So he decides, well, I'm going to give you a written reprimand. So you have the same infraction with different levels of discipline. And that's a grievance situation. That's going to become an issue. So there are absolutely circumstances where having this defined matrix is incredibly important to ensure fair and equal treatment. I would agree there could be circumstances that would arise that deserve a much deeper look, that aren't a copy and paste kind of situation. And the opportunity for the county to go down that road exists in the written language. we support that. I support that completely. So I didn't see the need for the change at all. Unfortunately, we had recently experienced a circumstance where the county felt that they needed to take a much more, the ultimate action and absolutely did that. So it was proven that capability was there.
Yeah, and you proved us wrong. This was important. 100%.
I think we understand your position on this. Does anybody have any questions about that? We got it.
Do you have a response to the question of why now it is such a point of contention that it be altered and either thrown out altogether or altered so heavily? Because we've never actually gotten an answer at any point. So could you guys provide us with one?
Do you want to address that, or do you want me to address it?
I'll let you address it.
Okay. Well, I wasn't a part of
Yeah.
previous bargaining
Yeah.
sessions. It was my understanding that, for one, it was eliminated from the county HR policy manual, and it's no longer utilized and memorialized as that grid.
Uh-huh.
But the county still uses progressive discipline for regular instances that aren't so egregious that it would then warrant something far more severe. So that is memorialized in the contract language, and under normal circumstances, it would be assumed that you would follow the progressive discipline with taking each action in steps, as opposed to jumping to suspension for a regular infraction. So whether the grid is in there or not, the intent is to follow progressive discipline absent egregious circumstances.
Right.
And what is in county policy, essentially this grid, or these
It's
categories of
I don't believe the
infraction?
categories are even included anymore, correct, Paulette?
No.
It's not in the policy manual at all.
So, I mean, to me, it leaves the doors wide open, because ultimately there are discipline depending on the infraction and the severity of it that is handled at the very low supervisor level, being like a company officer can issue discipline.
And-
Battalion chief can issue discipline. There are forms of discipline and it goes through a system of checks and balances, but it also doesn't involve the entire, downtown process. How, and again, I'm talking about lower forms. And I'm not even gonna guess on this. I know it's going to kick the doors open, and you're gonna have circumstances where discipline issued is not fair and equal for like infractions, like circumstances. It's just not going to happen. And to me, that just causes significant problems. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Man, if you guys can tell us, like, hey, here are a couple cases or what have you where this thing has failed and the county is not, whatever.
And that's a new
Okay.
thing. 2 years ago, you did away with that policy. It's very new. Very new. This has been policy for, 20-plus years.
Yeah, very
So,
effective.
yeah.
And we had actually amended the matrix in the past and made a couple infractions more severe, because we felt like I guess the nature of our job and that infraction carries a heavier weight.
And everything has to go through the administrative office. It has to. You
Yes.
can't sign a paperwork that says this person did this, and therefore this infraction is justifiable to receive this type of discipline without going through admin. So, and this gives admin the guideline with which they can utilize to properly provide discipline to those people that are deserving of it.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I think we understand this very clearly, and I appreciate the clarification.
Sure. And
Because that was missing from my conversations with the staff regarding that chart. We did not, I'll just tell you that I did not want to get rid of the different infractions. And quite frankly, I thought it was giving you some flexibility to get rid of those, to be honest with you.
Yes.
So I appreciate this feedback because
And you can hide an employee if you don't have this sometimes. You can hide a bad apple, you can hide a bad actor. That's what we want to prevent as well, because we think people should be disciplined and should be terminated when it's just cause. And without some things like this, you could potentially prevent that from happening, and creates greater liability to the county. So,
well, I appreciate the feedback.
Yes, ma'am.
we've been at it for an hour, maybe we should take a break.
Cool. All right, right on. Do it. So, this has been in my battalion wagon for like 5 months. So, this is Medal Day. This is something we try to do every year.
Glamour shot.
Are we ready to go back on?
That's what we were going for when I took
There's
it.
not too many pictures of him that are
You
not.
and glamour shots.
He's a
huh?
very photogenic person. I mean, look at him. Very photogenic. Doesn't take a bad picture.
Good one, was it like one of
Save
these?
you.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't pose him, but like I said, again, he is very
Put them on
photogenic.
a blanket.
I did have the boas and
The
things
best
like
part is
that.
he doesn't even know we're
Still think
talking
Chief
about him
Perkins
right
has
now.
the best
It's even
one.
better.
As a-
Yeah.
Oh, and the choir is
Marcus
behind him?
Point, yeah.
Yeah, gosh. That was a good one.
Good time.
Thanks for the opportunity to caucus.
You ready to go to lunch? So, we looked over the shift swap. To be honest with you, we really do feel like the proposal from before really captures the intent much better for both sides. What was already discussed and hashed out before, with, of course, these strike throughs here that were amendments that were changed.
Okay.
But I do feel like it's still, I understand the concerns that were presented in the past and exist now. We feel these are, reasonable rules to put in place that meet those concerns, but also don't eliminate the operational concerns that we had, about enforcing too many rules or timelines, things like that.
Okay, good. Can I?
So,
John?
yes, please.
Can we make copies for this?
Sure, have any?
You need, it'd be great if we could have one for everybody in the room,
Okay.
like 15 maybe.
Frankly, that was an issue before, and I'm sure you probably constructed this in a proper format, but that was something that happened a lot in previous sessions is, an offer is presented and we didn't work off of that offer oftentimes. It wasn't edited and returned and worked off of. It would just get thrown to the side and then another variation. And that's frustrating because there may be factors in there, it may be a small piece of language, but it may be something that's significant or carries a heavy weight, and it can get lost, and it just adds to the work of things. But, if it's just disagreeable and we're trashing it, that's one thing. But if there's counters, I think we should work off of existing.
The last, we'll
Yeah.
work off the last exchange.
All right. Okay, well. You have anything you wanted to go through, or that's pretty much where you're at on?
I'm gonna let you have this contract.
Okay.
But I hesitate to do it right now because
Oh.
I think it's something you have to go and look at, and it doesn't have the benefit of the conversation we've had today.
Sure.
So I want to make that clear. It's not,
And-
we walked in with this language, so it's all subject to tweaking because of conversations that we have ongoing.
Would you agree that for the MOUs that were actually, the actual MOUs, that exact language should be what is used in the contract? I would, unless there's, if there's a dispute with the MOU itself, but if an MOU is executed, that is a formal agreement within the contract itself. And I think the pay cycle one would fit into the contract. I don't think it needs to be a separate MOU. We can move that into the contract if that's agreeable. I don't see why we wouldn't necessarily, but
Well, sometimes an MOU has language in it that directly makes a change to existing contract language. And obviously, that would then be the agreement. Some of it just has language that is not neatly fitted into a contract language, like maybe an example like this one that we signed starts off with, whereas the parties have agreed to draft a new memorandum of understanding dated November 14, 2018, that memorializes the following, we wouldn't put that in the contract. So,
Well, no, you
Yeah, it
you
wouldn't-
put
I-
the
I don't-
second paragraph now, if,
yeah, I don't know, we'd have to look, I think we'd have to look through these to see how they are confirmed, comported into the contract, but I think what we're saying is that we don't have a disagreement in principle of what they do. And so what we have in front of us is a document, just because I'm saying this for the record. What we have in front of us is a document that is entitled Personnel Shift Exchange. In the top right corner, it says ECBCC IFF article new to CBA July 16, 2018. Actually, we're receiving it today, October 11th, 2019, and it has been proposed by the IFF with some deletions for our consideration. All right?
Okay. Something that one of the primary goals when we began negotiations, and there was discussion leading into trying to kind of prep, and then when we began negotiations, we presented a wage plan. It's our goal to try to establish a defined pay structure. As it stands now, one issue I think we have with recruitment and retention is the fact that when an employee comes in or a prospective employee looks at coming to work here, when they look at, there's no flow. Okay, I'm going to start at this pay. 10 years down the road, where am I going to be? 20 years down the road, where am I going to be? And it doesn't. We don't have that capture. Now, previously, the website included, use the quartile thing. There really was no path as far as how to move through. Now, fortunately, we know, the county has been doing the COLAs for the past few years, and that's great. However, those can also go away at any time, be reduced at any time. So it's the more we interact with newer employees that come in, with existing employees, that seems to be a common trend, is not having a defined flow. And a lot of other departments do offer that. And it's done in a number of different ways. Some departments pay for, incentive pays if you have all the USAR disciplines, or you're a hazardous materials technician, or your water rescue individual, or your we are paying for paramedic and EMT. So there's a number of different ways to put that together. The county did the wage study, and when we talked about this before, now it's pretty much been. What is the status of the study, if you don't mind me asking?
Are you talking about the Evergreen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so, what I would say is that if it's the same Evergreen study,
The Evergreen study that was supposed to cost about $100,000, I suppose, and, I guess it didn't get completed, or they didn't do some of the stuff they were supposed to do.
Right.
It kind of just went away.
Yeah. Well, what I would say is this, I have documents from Administrator Brown in which he refused to pay the invoices for the study because he thought that it was inaccurate and inappropriate information. So that's exactly what I would say is and that goes back almost 2.5 years, or I think the invoice.
Did he base that on anything, or is it just his opinion?
All I have is the invoice that,
Okay.
where they basically said they thought that the information was,
Right.
it was not a good product, is the bottom line, is what was shown to me. Yeah, that's what the records show, is that.
And I know, we worked with Lori when she was still here, to pull information and try to look at it, things like that. And we know there were some issues in there. For just a quick example, a comparison, our fire lieutenant, they send that out and they run comparisons. The information obtained from the city of Pensacola, for example, they compared us to their fire lieutenants. their fire lieutenants are actually driver operators, so it wasn't a comparable rank. We should have been compared to a captain in the city of Pensacola, a $10,000 difference. Well, when you're working on an average with only 6 numbers, that carries a pretty good value. That was just one of the little errors that they had found in there, and I know Lori and Eric were working to try to figure some of those things out, but, countywide. So I can understand, if the county gets this study back and they say, yeah, this is just, we just feel like there's a lot of inaccuracies here, and this is a problem, you didn't hold up your end of the deal in producing this study. I can understand that. However, I know the sheriff's office utilized the pay study and negotiated wage improvements off of that, based off of the information produced by that study. It's somewhere ballpark, $9 million, I believe, over a few years, to go towards their pay.
Now,
So I have to
real quick,
believe.
let me ask, this was pre them having the jail or post them having the jail?
Post.
Okay.
Post-jail.
Yeah, so that's a lot of employees that they offloaded, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because the county absorbed them, they
Yeah.
took over the jail.
Yeah, they offloaded, but that didn't change they still, county still paid up, I guess is what it put it, but they, so the point is, the information was utilized. I know the sheriff's office had to put forth quite a bit of work to extract what was actually needed in the rest of the study and make sure the information was, I guess, correct and agreeable between them and the county. But it was used. So I have a hard time just completely dismissing it, the information in it. But either way, the coming into all of this, that was the information that we worked off of as far as the proposals. We presented a couple different plans. Being a couple different. Well, we presented one, and then I think it got, through conversation, got changed up a little bit. What, you and I have spoke before, and I would equate some of this to this pay structure. I feel like the county, we want to know what you value. We want to instill a defined plan, but there's a number of different ways to do that. You can structure it to where a high-performing employee who's going above and beyond is able to earn a little more. Or you can just say, nope, it's fair and equal across the board, everybody gets the same, period. And I guess it's kind of nice to know that up front. I know how we feel about it, but it's kind of nice to know that up front before you invest a great deal of time in structuring a plan if there's no interest in it. And it's important that we're all in agreement and on the same page, because at the end of the day, we got to sell this to the commissioners too. But we've also accumulated some information, and we don't have to go all in depth in this today. Choose not to, but we've accumulated information. We have a couple different wage studies provided by different folks, comparable to the immediate area, with a reasonable travel distance within state anyway. And it's solid. It's solid with what Evergreen shows as far as that there should be a recommended increase over your career. Now the question is, how long should it take to get to that max out period? These are things I feel like we need to figure out, but I just, we have different, different leadership now, so I don't know what your opinion on all of it is. I do know that we are currently, we are either the last or the second to last in the area as far as starting pay. And now a lot of things have changed in the past year. As far as surrounding departments have increased their starting pay, they've stepped up their game. They've changed their retirement benefits. Midway, as an example, has really jumped up. They've increased the starting pay, and their retirement 25 and 100%, right?
4% multiplier.
4% multiplier.
4% multiplier, and that's nailed down. And rumor is they look to increase that as well. And they're fixing to add
28 positions.
Huh?
28.
28
Over
positions.
6
Now, it's a 7-year plan that they're looking at, but it's anticipated that they would hire these folks in the next probably couple of years, bring them on, that type of stuff. Personally, I do feel like we're gonna see an exodus from here of our younger folks, even folks that have been here up to 5 years. Because if you recall, after 2011, FRS changed to where you have to do 30 years of regular time before you can even enter the drop. So guys with even 5 years here, it's still smarter for them to.
Yeah, can I interject on that real quick? So you take me, that's been here just 5 years now, as a paramedic, and having all the classes and everything I have. I'll go over there making approximately off of starting base pay, not including and paramedics, say 36,000 is my starting pay with my paramedic pay. I'll go over there with almost a $10,000 increase right off the bat. And I can buy back my 5 years and go 20 and be done at 100% retirement
And
versus doing 25
have a
here.
higher amount of retirement.
And have a higher amount of retirement versus 90% through here. So it's very lucrative for me to go make that jump. Now, will I? No, I'm not that type of person. I'm invested here. I've had 15 years between volunteer, part-time, and full-time experience. But it's very lucrative when you're talking a $10,000 right off the bat pay. They have incentive pays for every piece of, your hazmat, your fire officer 1, fire officer 2, and then you throw the retirement in on top of that. What's enticing me to stay here? So that's just an example for you.
And I would build on that. I think it's, when we talked before about trying to build a system to where we attempt to recruit from within the area, from within the county. It's nice to, hire your own folks. You're homegrown, you have really a better opportunity that folks are gonna stay here. It is the reality. But when you're comparing to departments that are the next county over, that's still home, I get folks are likely not to uproot and go to South Florida or something like that, but it's not unreasonable, especially with our shifts, it's not unreasonable to drive a couple hours over to South Walton even. It's not a ridiculous thing. So we do have to take those departments into account, because it's not a Monday through Friday job. Who's gonna drive 2.5 hours Monday through Friday to go to work or something like that? It's not. They're making the trip once a week. So, and making double the pay, up to double the pay. It's a significant consideration. And understanding, again, a lot of this has changed in the past year and a half, that these other departments have stepped up. Even PACE has upped their starting pay significantly. They've improved their retirement benefits. That's turning into a very good little department, and it's also growing. Some of these are going through what we went through a few years ago. Big expansion, big plans, that's a draw for folks. They want to be a part of a developing department, so that, places like PACE, Midway, Holly Navarre are going to be an attraction. And if the need does come, within a couple of years, a year or 2 years, something like that, that we need to grow and expand, we need to add additional companies on, we're going to have an even harder time than we already do recruiting people. And it's not going to be from the immediate area. If you're from here, you can go make 40,000, or I can come make 30,000. Let me think, So we're going to have to try to pull folks again from South Florida, and then you have that same issue where we've had pretty good, 50-50 maybe, as far as the folks that are coming from South Florida that turn around quick and go, or maybe get a year or two, maybe even 3. But when home calls and said, hey, they've been sitting on a list down there the whole time, gaining experience. Hey, you're up, gone, instantly gone. So it's hard to replace that. And unfortunately, it takes a few years to really, and please let me know your thoughts on this too, but I feel like it takes a few years at minimum to start to really get a return on investment for a firefighter. What training, gear, everything that's put into hiring a firefighter to start to kind of get that back. And if people are flying within that window, we're out that. And that's the nature of the beast. Sometimes it's going to happen, of course, but if we can recognize these things and try to make some adjustments, maybe it's a better way to do business. So anyway, we feel it's incredibly significant and would have a major impact to have that defined plan. Is one, it's a huge benefit for existing employees, because you can sit down, you plan better. When you're younger, you're not thinking about what am I going to make in 10 years, what's my retirement look like, what's my health insurance look like. I'm thinking about those things, but it doesn't take very long before life happens, and then all of a sudden I'm thinking about those things. Or the first time you try to go get a mortgage, a home loan, and you make what? yeah, you need to be looking at like this range down here. We got a nice doghouse for you over here. It's very difficult for firemen, so, again, the structure, we feel like is very important. I'm definitely open, would like to see, I'd like us to work together and come to terms with what, you know, what is the right plan gonna look like for us, and if it's a possibility. Now, obviously, the obvious problem is budget. The MSBU is tapped. One or two of the commissioners have made it abundantly clear that they will never, under any circumstances, raise taxes. And that's fine. I think that's kind of a ridiculous notion. It's good to maybe have those feelings, but to just say never ever is not exactly correct. But okay, that's cool. No desire to raise the MSBU, that's fine. We have to start thinking outside the box. And so we discussed hybrid funding systems. Part of, you know, what all went down last year was some of the folks that left. We've always been told for years that MSB, that's it, that's all you got. You live in your box, you live within your means, that's it. Okay. But then we saw this past year, you know, just in maintenance alone, $250,000 was transferred over to the MSBU to help cover that. And God, it was definitely needed. So what we're seeing, or what we're starting to realize now, is what the supposed rules of the past are not exactly accurate. And there may be other doors that can be opened and other options that can be explored. I know the proposal or the idea or concept of looking at potential, you know, impact fees, which you're not going to raise a ton of money off of that. But if it's an appropriate thing to look at and an appropriate thing to levy, then levy it, because every little bit obviously helps. So we feel like there are options there. It's not as simple as, okay, we look at the MSBU, we look at your budget. You want this money to go to raises? Well, guys, there's no money here. Sorry, we're done talking about it. I don't feel like that's the case. We feel like there is money there. There is a way to make it happen. And I know it's probably going to take some doing as far as, you know, maybe the commissioners or what have you, but it warrants being looked at and worked towards, I feel like. And I hope you would agree that the pay is not where it should be, and we should be doing better. So part of this process for us as well, we had a report run on the CAFR, and just the whole intent of that is to take a snapshot of the county, the budget, the health of the budget. And what we're seeing is the budget is healthy. There are several markers where the county is above. These are good indicators of the overall health of the budget for the past several years, not just, you know, 1 year. What's in reserves, or, you know, unreserved funds, you know how they phrased it, unreserved
Yes.
funds? The percentage.
Unearmarked funds,
Yeah.
basically.
It's not to get off, you know, too much in the weeds of it, but we use this as a tool to assist us as well, to say that the general budget or the general fund is healthy, and it has been. So anyway, we feel like there are options there. Andrew has the proposals from before.
Okay.
I would like for you guys to look at it. Ms. Gilly, I would like for you to take some time and look at it and see kind of how it's structured, and maybe, you know, engage with Chief Williams and Director Dosh on, as far as from an operational standpoint. Some of this you may look at, I had no idea if this is important or not, or this looks like made up words to me or something, and
Only if it's in a different language. I can probably get it.
Okay, so I'll get this passed up here in just a second. So originally, the way a lot of this was come up with goes back to when Tom Turner was the Human Resource Director, so 2 and an interim ago. And so the way, I'll let you pass those out. And then there should, one of these goes to each person as well. Yeah, I got it. Okay. Just give me a second. So the deal is like this.
Thank you.
when we spoke with Mr. Turner, it was kind of agreed upon that the county wanted something tangible, to say, okay, well, you know, this person has earned a pay raise. And the way we came up with that was a couple different things. One was education, one was time and rank with kind of good behavior, which would be measured through the yearly evaluation process. The other would be a passing score of a 70 on their annual physical fitness test. So you kind of really had to put some skin in the game to advance from level to level. So what you see in front of you, there's 10 levels for each rank, firefighter and lieutenant. And so everybody comes in, hire someone off the street, they come in as a firefighter level 1. And the way that works, so then they spend their first year as a firefighter level 1. They meet the qualifications, they do their year in there, then they would, if they so chose to, they would advance to level 2, okay? You got a year, get the stuff done for free. When your year rolls around, you can then go to a 3. So you can accelerate each step every year if you so choose to, through personal experience of working in another department in a similar system to this. Some guys will take advantage of that, some guys won't, because life happens. You can't get some of your education done. You goof up here or there, maybe you're not quite as in good a shape as you hoped that you were, and things happen. So that would prevent some stuff. So within 10 years, you could max out. You can max firefighter pay in 10 years. So then, from there, we talk about the lieutenants, and it works the same way. You get a guy, he gets promoted, or gal gets promoted to the rank of lieutenant. They come in as a level 1, and they just keep on working through the 10 steps till they max out or promote. Now, you do not have to hit firefighter level 10 to promote to lieutenant. The 5-year requirement is still there. You can promote to battalion chief whenever you guys get that stuff worked out, to whatever the requirement is that's agreed upon. So not everyone will max out within their rank, either due to promotion or time, their lack of desire, or their age in which they get hired on. If we hired someone that's maybe a little later in life, this is their second career, maybe they did a full, 20-something years in the military, they may not max out in every rank before. They may just want to come in and remain a fireman for 15, 20 years. They're okay with taking a little bit less than, full retirement because they hit the age. So, not everyone's going to run through this. The other things, once you get past your steps into the language, EMT and paramedic pay will be rolled into the hourly rate upon successfully completing the requirements. That's reflected into the pay charts, and I'll show that. And there is some errors I just noticed on the lieutenant pay chart, which we'll talk about. Employees, the next one down would be employees shall receive special pay for having operations or technician level in all 5 disciplines of the urban search and rescue stuff, which we do have those teams that are functional. They deploy. Sometimes. They did just have a rope rescue call the other day.
Yeah, Pensacola Christian.
Yeah, Pensacola Christian. Hazmat as well is included for the special pay. And then the USLA open water life-saving, which is a, 40-hour class, I believe it is, where you are certified in open water rescue, which we do have the 2 beaches and a couple other stations that have the wave runners and all that do the water rescue. And so then there's a little bit of extra pay with that. And then the following bullet point is the approved classes. And really, the way the classes go and are listed, they follow the requirements for promotion. But here's the thing. You get a brand-new fireman coming into the department. They decide they want to do all their hazmat and USAR stuff before they ever take any classes that would count towards promotion. That's their choice. That's their right to do that. Does it still count for them advancing in levels? Sure it does, because there's value in that. But they can't get upset when their 5-year mark rolls around. Well, I don't have the right classes for promotion. Okay, well, that's on you. There's personal ownership that is taken into this. The other thing, and you'll see it on the last page, but still or it's actually the last bullet point, for classes not specifically listed or approved continuing education, there's a lot of stuff that comes up in changes that are made with the state. I can tell you the class list that is written here, some of those classes have been retitled and things like that through the state of Florida. You know, they used to be 40-hour classes, now they're 45-hour classes. The requirements for FO1, FO2, FO3, FO4, those, some classes you needed for FO1, now those got moved to an FO2 thing, so on and so forth. So the state kind of moves that stuff around. So we wanted to be specific so guys could use this as a resource, but also leave some wiggle room in there as things evolved and we weren't having to constantly try and update this thing to keep up with what the state of Florida was doing down at the fire college. So then you can go and look at the pay charts.
We wanted to also reinforce the idea that continuing education is not limited to college coursework only. In this profession, there's a great deal of continuing education classes, conferences, things like that, or specific professional development certification specific to this that doesn't.
Right, we're not
reimbursement
encapsulate
plan.
the job.
Thank you. Yes,
Yeah.
like the reimbursement plan for college tuition, the county offers wouldn't cover these types of things. But there's still a significant value, a huge value to those hours of training and education. And so this
Right.
part of the reason for that coursework in there.
Correct. So if we're looking at the firefighter pay, so going back to the Evergreen study, well, let me go back a step before that. So when we decided we were going to go down this road, pardon me? So when we decided we were going to go down this road, we kind of thought of where we would come in at, and we agreed that 60% over 10 years was going to be our starting point. We got numbers back from Evergreen, which I understand that whole situation, but we got those numbers, and we realized that we weren't really that far off, because they were coming in at 65. So I adjusted this to be 65% over 10 years. Yes, ma'am. I understand. So when we start talking about, where do I want to start? So let me explain just how this works, and I'll get into some other things. So the first column, where it says firefighter at the very top, you have your hourly rate plus the overtime rate. So you would add those two columns, and that would be, like 17 and some change, what that guy would make if he was on time and a half. So special pay is a 30-cent bump an hour, and that's referring to the USAR stuff or hazmat, the USLA open water. Let's say you have a guy that holds multiples, which we have a lot of people that do. You're only going to get compensated for one. You can't rack them up and get 90 cents extra an hour. It's just 30, period. EMT, that's a 51-cent bump in pay off the base rate. EMT with special pay, so then you're looking at 81 cents. See how I kind of added and built onto that. So that's how the plan is laid out. It works the same way for the lieutenant. So really what we kind of boil down to is how fast or how many levels do we want to have, and what's the percentage, gained over those levels. We fully understand both sides of this coin. It works in the county's favor for this to be a 30-year plan. It's not as big of a financial hit at one time, the longer this is drug out. But that also does not work in our favor. There are some departments out there you can max out in 5 years. Looking at the 30-year versus a 5-year, we felt that 10 was very fair. There's some departments in this area that sit at about 7 levels for each rank with overlap. So really, if you get promoted from a firefighter to an officer's position because of how overlap works, you don't have a full 7 levels to go through. You probably are gonna have 5 or 6 with the way the overlap works. And that's another thing that can be talked about and negotiated. But the great thing about the way this whole thing is designed is that I can sit down with a gentleman or a lady on their first day in the firehouse, say, listen, here's how ECFR works. This is where you start when it comes to pay. These are the things you can do to advance your career. Maybe consider this versus that, whatever. And you know, at the end of the day, if nothing ever changed with the contract as far as wages went, where you could start and then where you would retire at. And so going into planning for your future and your family is there. Is it worth it to me to look at a promotion? I don't know. Well, here it is, you know, things like that. So does anyone, there's a lot of information out there, just barely touching on it.
What we have found over the years is in the last 20 years is, you can come into this department as a firefighter with minimum standards. And that's fine. You can pull hose and you can do all of the things that we need you to do with fires out and go to car wrecks and run medical calls. With any organization, you're going to have overachievers. And with that, we've had, usually there's a need first, and then there's the desire, and then the people who pursue those extra classes, extra training with water calls on the beaches primarily was kind of the first thing. And then taking lifeguarding classes or USLA life-saving classes in the water. And then that evolved into special operations, which is the high angle rescue and all the things that are designed by the state that require that. And then we have the hazardous materials team, we have EMTs and paramedics. All those things far exceed the minimum standards just to get hired on as a firefighter. And I think this, what he's telling you is, this puts in a matrix of value on the types of additional skills that firefighters bring to the table.
So, 2 other things pertaining to this. One problem we currently, well, we got a lot of problems, but one of them is compression. So we have a lot of people that have a varying number of years of service, but they're all making relatively the same amount of money. And that's really not right. It's not fair to them. So that's another thing that this solves, is now we can look at their years of service and education and put them in the appropriate pay bracket to then help alleviate some of that compression. Are you gonna have it when you hire a group of 20 guys? Well, yeah, but kind of like what Lieutenant Averill was just saying, you'll have some of these guys want to accelerate a lot faster, some that won't for various reasons. And so that kind of also helps with a lot of this. The other thing is, how do you implement something like this? And there's a lot of different avenues to go down. I've kind of seen with talking with a lot of people that have switched from this range to an actual structure. They planned for it coming, and they may have delayed the implementation a few years to get everything squared away on paper, but then when it was time, they just ripped the Band-Aid off all at one time. Let's just do it. And so what that would kind of look like is we would sit down and take everybody for each rank and look at their years of service, okay? And you start plugging them in. Okay, this guy goes to level 1, this guy goes to level 10, this one to 7, this one to 4. And that's where you get plugged in. So initial implementation is based off your years of service, okay? Now, the caveat to that is you now have the life of that contract, that first year of implementation, or that first span of years of implementation, to make sure you're up to par for everything on the level at which you've been inserted. So you can take a fireman, for example, that has been here for 8 years, but he's maybe been a little lackadaisical when it comes to his continuing education. So you put him in at a level 8, and you're paying him as a level 8, but it's his job to make sure he meets the requirements for a level 8 by the end of the 3rd year of the contract. If not, then the way a lot of departments run it is they'll drop him down to the level at which his education meets. So if he was sitting there for 3 years at an 8, he may get dropped to a 5 or a 4 and have to hang out there if he so chooses, or work his way to where it's appropriate. Some of the delayed ones, they get a little bit more complicated. People seem to feel they ease the financial burden, but, this all can be planned and accounted for. But really, I guess, one thing we've never gotten a clear, defined answer back on when we've handed whatever version of this proposal is across the table. We understand that the numbers cause some uneasy
There's sticker
feelings.
shock,
There is.
obviously.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%.
So-
100%. Because you're looking at a maxed out firefighter paramedic with special pay at an overtime rate of over $30 an hour. Like, I get it. Totally get it. Okay, so then what's the counter to that? We've never received a legitimate counter offer to that. We've had some things slid across the table, and it didn't make a lot of sense. We said, can you explain the math to us? No, not really. So then where did the numbers come from? Kind of some of those answers.
Well, no, we know
Where's
what
the
happened.
problem? Is it the 10 years is too short? Is it too long? Is the 65% too high? Let's start talking some numbers here. Let's start talking some requirements and really get this thing moving. Because I think from a financial planning aspect for the department, this is progressive. This is moving in theme with what Chief Williams has proposed with his 5-year plan. I know some of the things that I've heard come out of your office, Ms. Gilly, of actually putting pen to paper and having a solid solution and not just kind of winging it like we have in the past. And I know, I can only imagine with you guys, if you can go to a chart and be like, oh, that's it, instead of this range. I would assume that would make life a little easier. Maybe not. I don't know.
Do what they tell us to do.
And, we submitted this, and the following meeting they come back, and it had been, the plan had been costed, essentially, at the proposed rates. Of course, the response was kind of where are you gonna get the money from? And the cost for the initial implementation to meet the study, the recommendations from the study, is how it was explained to us anyway. And then this thing was passed across the table here. I'm hoping this is the last one in existence. Maybe it is. Anyway, here's our proposal. This meets the pay study. Oh, okay. This only cost $250,000. To implement the plan as we suggested was $1.18 million. It was a large number. That was to implement. So you had some big adjustments, to get started kind of thing. And I think it took just about 2 minutes before we realized these numbers do not look right at all. These salary figures are off. This is not right. He used the wrong numbers. He went through the EFIN system. I believe you spoke to that as well, that, yeah, these aren't really the right numbers for calculation. Okay, well, let's look at the right numbers. And I never, from that point, there was never a counter, never a return, never any further discussion. It was kind of I guess understood that nothing was going to happen at that point in time. So that was kind of the process there. We attempted to discuss it a little bit, but it just... It's not my opinion that it went where it should have gone to have a decision made about it. It was more of just let's wait for the right timing. And this kind of played into the executive sessions which were supposed to have taken place. That took quite a while. It's a long story there, but.
Now, obviously, there's a huge financial aspect to this, but there's something that's coming up in the next couple of years that's actually going to be completely related, associated with the pay structure we're having. We're going to reach our 25 years as a department, which means a lot of people are on the way out. And all these specialized classes, paramedic is a 2-year program to pretty much go through, and hazmats, special ops, you can't do that in a year. It's crazy. So we have this time frame from now until we hit our 25-year mark, where we have to backfill these experienced positions. And I'm talking people that have had experience for 10, 15 years doing these specialized tasks. We have to backfill. And you can take somebody off the street and you can put them through the classes in a couple of years, but they obviously lack the level of experience. So by us having a STEP program that shows that, hey, this is what you come in at. If we have experienced people that come from the outside who already have several years on the job, that will be a huge asset to us when we move forward. When we have 20, 30 people that will be retiring at once, it's going to be a huge gap to fill for us. That's where that STEP program as a recruitment and a retention tool is of huge value. It's definitely something that we need. We can't just stay with a flat base rate and hope that it'll just be all right for the next 5 years.
Especially when surrounding departments are offering incentives for all of those that are listed or not.
Just to put in perspective, the other wage studies we have, and I'll be happy to, when you send that information to you if you want to look at it, that plan would actually put us, the starting wages, at third in the area.
Yeah.
Whereas we currently sit at the bottom.
like-
So it's not even like we're aiming super high and we're going to have the top pay in the area.
Right,
It makes us
1183
competitive.
times 2920 puts it like 34,500 roughly a year. The average, according to this, is 38 grand, 39,000, somewhere around there. So, we're not looking at being the highest paid starting out by any means. Yeah, 39.4, and we'd be the third lowest paid instead of dead last.
And to add to the, I guess, the flow of all this process, we talked about the grand plan, for all, and that was a back and forth. But then it was understood that there was not going to be any action on behalf of the commissioners to change anything in the budget at that point in time. Then there was conversation about the addition of the driver's position. So maybe we can focus on that because it's a smaller scope. So that was added in to the current framework. It was kind of shoved in the middle. It is a little messy just because you have two scales, and if you're going to insert one into the middle, then somebody's got to move, right? Well, you're not going to move the fireman to make less money, so it slides up. But anyway, that was kind of in conjunction with everything. The wheels really kind of coming off several months ago, so it just fizzled.
Do you want the driver stuff?
No, I mean, wait. It's just to sum it up. We feel like the overall goal is to have a defined pay structure, and
Merit-based, not just based off of longevity.
yes, yeah, it is our belief that if you're a hard worker and you're a high performer and you contribute to the organization, you should have the opportunity to earn more money for that. At the same time, even a person who is a good employee, is not a slacker necessarily, but I'm happy being a fireman and riding backwards. I don't want to go take all these classes. I want to be a fireman. That's it. There's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. But they also deserve to see advancement throughout their career in respect to pay. So that's the overall goal. Understand it can look a lot of different ways, and I'm definitely interested to see what you have or what you think about it if you have a chance to look. But and then the big problem is whose piggy bank does it come from? How do we get there? But I would really like to try to work towards it because it's a problem for the current employees on several levels, and it's going to continue to be an issue for future employees. Recruitment retention. It's something that needs to be done. I know you've heard all this. I'm sure you've seen it through your own research.
I think this is a very thoughtful proposal, and I really do appreciate it. So I hear everything you're saying. So I want to make that clear. I understand. I would like some time, obviously, to look at it.
Sure.
And I think the other thing I'd just like to say is that I understand your frustration in terms of, how long you've been negotiating, how many times you've come to the table. So I understand and hear that as well. I think you've identified this too. I am the manager, and I respond to a board that sets policy and budget, and that is their responsibility. So to move forward, we have to move forward together, right? We have to work together
Absolutely.
to get them to work together, okay, on a solution, okay? So I think that would be something that we should all think about as well, you know, because I think that's a key, because, you know, you could ask me to make a decision today, and you know, I mean, I think that's part of your frustration that you
Well,
dealt
but
with.
at the same time-
And people gave you something that you thought was a decision that ultimately wasn't a decision. And you know I'm not gonna do that. I don't think that's fair to you. So I'm just sharing that with you that, I have,
No, I agree 100%. It starts here. If there's not agreements at the table here, if the plan's not, and whatever it is, if it's not structured appropriately, or, you know, again, there's just not agreement, you can't go to that next step. It'd be no different if we go to the commission, you know, a couple commissioners, and, hey, this is our plan, here's how you do it, and then at face value, you're like, yeah, that's great, I like that. And you come in later on, like, this is garbage, they're trying to do this, I don't support this, I don't think this is good. Well, now I'm gonna back the administrator, because that's what they're supposed to do. You know, so it absolutely has to be a agreements here. And that's where, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you actually being here. That's, I would say, been one of the largest problems with negotiations in the past, that no one in the room is actually authorized to make a decision. So it's just trade notes, and, I mean, he can give his professional input all day long. Everybody can give their, you know, their expert opinion as their related field, but it still had to go downtown. And for a lot of situations, it just, I feel like it made things extremely ineffective.
well, it would be
So I hope
easier
you
for me
can-
to not be in the room, but I would not do that to you. So that's a big reason why I'm here too. Because I would like to
Appreciate
hear
it
that.
very
from
Greatly
you.
appreciated.
So,
Okay, I know we're getting short on.
This side of the table, and we felt before, like your counterpart, before you came along, the information never left this room. It never went any farther than here. You know, so I really think that.
well, now you know how to,
Yes, ma'am.
you can burn me an effigy, I suppose, if you don't like the outcome, but I would share with you that, you know, I have heard you and I understand it, and I appreciate what you've provided, because I can tell there's a lot of thoughtfulness in this.
Well, and I think it's something I know it's something you're looking at, and we saw that just the recent with the pilot program for fleet. I mean, that addresses starting pay, you know, so I know that you may not have turned your aim at public safety yet, or whether it's fire or EMS or, you know, anywhere, but maybe we hadn't got to that point yet, but I know you're looking, and that was a definitive statement. That was a definitive action that the board voted on and to support. I don't know all the details of the program, but my understanding is money was allotted to address starting pay in that division. So that's got to be a good sign, you know?
Well, they did publicly ask us to look into it, and so we did, and so that's why I'm saying that having that support is key to anything that we work
Sure.
on, right? So that's, I want to make that very clear. Their support is extremely important to the outcome of this, or the, you know, and how this moves forward, so.
Okay, sounds good. All right. I was gonna talk about, I think it's important to understand the history of how we got here. I think there's value in that, but at the same time, I really just don't, I'd like to not focus on negative stuff. I'd like to move forward and do that and see where it takes us. I feel like there, you know, in the past there were a lot of just bad faith actions, you know, putting off. I think the communication is terrible, frankly, and I've expressed that to you before. And I feel like you've done a great job for as busy as you are as communicating back. But that's something that's been very obstructive in the past. So I just leave that be. I do want to move on. There are some new items that we're going to have that aren't currently in the contract. Again, it's things that have changed. One, and I'd like to hear from you if you can give us some information on the new cancer bill, the new policy, that type of stuff. I'd like to hear some of that. That's something that in my opinion, is gonna take some time, and maybe a labor management meeting or two would be the appropriate way to kind of sit down and hash out some things. But I would really like to, once that process for the future is defined, I want to capture that and place it into the contract. Because I think there are a lot of pieces to it that aren't being considered when the discussion is with, benefits and HR, those personnel. Maybe from, it's not necessarily an operational standpoint, but in essence, this is more of a, I guess, departmental level. But I need a better understanding of how, HR views the situation, the county's interpretation of the bill as it is. What do you guys think about it? Because we may have a different, you read a sentence and we both interpret it two different ways. So I think it's incredibly important to hash that stuff out while we have the opportunity. So in the future, it's a done deal. The last thing you want to have a legal battle over is interpretation of a couple lines in a bill when a person's struggling dealing with cancer. That's not the intent. So I do understand the current situation that we're in was kind of we've got to get on it. I understand.
Well, and I think we talked about, the fact that it's a new product in the marketplace too is also part of what we're dealing with. All of the municipalities and the counties, I think, are scrambling to try and find this particular product. And so I think
Right now, we do have a plan with one of the vendors, the insurance companies. Right now, I can't tell you the name, but I am working with an individual with this policy plan and everything like that. So what I'm doing now is trying to work with her to get the next steps. What is the process when we actually have somebody tell me step 1, step 2, step 3? So those are the things that we're working out at this particular point. So we are in communication with this company to find out. We talked about briefly how we want to do like a FAQ, frequently asked questions, where we all will meet and talk about it, where everybody will be on the same page. Just like you were talking about the EAP program, we want to be able to publish something where everybody can have an idea of what it means, who's covered, and exactly what the statute says. So you're correct when everybody has their interpretation of a statute. So that's one of the things that we're going to have in our FAQs to make sure that everybody understands what the statute is requiring of us versus what everybody think it is and what everybody wants.
Well, and that's why I think it's incredibly important to capture that and put it into the contract, because, no offense, county policy, depending on when people change, things change. And so I do fear a situation where 10 years down the road, an HR director comes in, a new person may come in or something and decide, I don't read this way, and decide to trash that policy or amend that policy. We have zero control over that. I mean, we can obviously try to argue it in the event something happens, but I think it's incredibly important to capture whatever process we set forth and agree on. But again, it takes understanding of our current health benefits, the policy as it stands with this third-party company. It's that full scope picture. How do we set this process forward, capture that, and then it's protected. Okay. And to me, is incredibly important that happen. Okay. But if we start off on the right foot and we cover the bases, we should be okay. And absolutely, if things change in the future, the law formally, I don't know, things change, obviously. Laws can change, can be amended, things like that. Then, obviously the contract is always up for negotiation. You always have those opportunities. So it's not like it's locked away for forever. It can never be looked at again. But I feel some of what we have experienced is, hey, we want to change this and take this away, and we feel like this is a protection built in here for employees that creates equality. We want to do away with that. Okay, well, can you give me a reason why you want to do away with that? Not really. Or give me an example where it's been an issue. Again, it's kind of, if it's not broke, don't fix it. If it's some, things that we're obviously using. So that's my goal. But I know that's going to take a lot of legwork. And again, maybe it just not collective bargaining sessions, but just meetings. To kind of work those things out. I look forward to getting rolling with that pretty quick.
Okay.
So anyway, One of the other things that we've had an issue with, and in the past, it was really hard to discuss in negotiations because we didn't represent these employees. However, now we do. Operational battalion chiefs, line battalion chiefs. There are six of them. So earlier, actually it goes back over a year now, we filed with PERC for a clarification because we have the 6 line position chiefs, and then we have some that work within more the administrative side. Our intent was to represent them, have them be a part of the bargaining unit. So we go through the process. It takes a while, and what finally was landed on was, I guess, joint stipulations and agreement settlement, essentially, and a definite, you have the line chiefs because of community of interest. They work 24-hour shifts, the type of work they do, but that was really the determining factor, I feel like. But it separated what we consider admin chiefs. That would be the fire marshal, chief of training, and chief of logistics. Is that right? Okay. They work more of a daytime schedule. That's the way it worked out. So, excuse me. Then comes okay, we represent these individuals now. There's a common community of interest. They are bargaining unit members. They are 24-hour employees, but they're not being paid in accordance with FLSA. They don't get paid overtime for the hours they work, and we feel like they should. I guess one thing we're maybe waiting on, like Andrew hit on earlier, is we've asked. I know one of the battalion chiefs has worked with administration. I believe worked with you quite a bit here recently too, and Director Dosh has been, working on it. I know it's been sent down to HR multiple times throughout the last year, and we can't get a response as to what the issue is. And I don't know. I feel that the PERC ruling is very solid and sound, that they're in our supervisory unit. So from that stance, we are the same. If I can accrue overtime per the law, that individual should do the same. And I can't seem to understand why this is such a delay or a hold up there.
Well, I haven't been presented, I think, with this question, at least I don't remember being presented with this question, so we're gonna have to go back and take a look at it. We understand the issue. The issue is you want us to respond as to whether
I want the battalion chiefs to be paid.
who are included in the unit
Yes, sir.
are FLSA, are covered by the FLSA instead of exempt. Because the question might not turn on bargaining unit placement. It might turn on the application of the FLSA.
And I understand that. And the evidence and exhibits used to determine the PERC ruling also support the reason they should be converted.
Well, that's what,
from
that's certainly, there were stipulations made to jointly by both parties in that proceeding, and we'll just have to pull those and look at those, make a determination.
All those have been pulled, by the way. You may not have gotten them, but there was questionnaires that were, and sorry to point, but I believe it did come from the attorney's office at one point, or it may have been HR, I'm not sure. It came from downtown. There were a ton of, I say a ton, it was a questionnaire essentially, but it was all the same stuff that was asked and presented throughout the process with PERC.
Okay.
Same stuff, same explanations, all that, and all that was done, and all that was submitted, and where it is now, I have no idea. Now, I can find out. Sir?
We'll find that out. Get
Okay.
back to you.
I understand if you want to look at it, but please understand it's been a year in the making of, hey, here's what's going on. Can you please look at this? Yeah, I'll get back with you. Yep, I'll get back with you. Yeah, I'll get back with you. There's only so many offices downtown to look at it. Is kind of how it feels,
All right.
But, so that's kind of the gut punch with the battalion chiefs. However, Chief Brass, there's also some language that we would like to submit relating specifically to those chiefs because they are, yes, sir.
Okay.
So I'm gonna shut up and.
So this is actually the 2013, 2015, but within it, it has, and I'll give this to you, Michael, is that it has highlighted the actual articles in which the battalion chief has been added to these articles.
Okay.
So there's no existing articles, they've just been added in there. They're highlighted, and then any alterations to that language has then also been highlighted, which is in gray. If I can get to one of the articles there that has it. So it's been highlighted, so you can see that.
Okay.
And basically, and as such as I have the overall feeling, is that it professionalizes the position more. It basically creates accountability within the job description and captures basically the current benefits. There is no real additional. There are some aspects of that create more stringent standards associated with the position for promotion,
Okay.
which are important to us, just like the merit-based raise system. We do not want to be given anything without an equal effort on the employee's behalf to receive that benefit.
Okay.
So all those things are outlined within that.
So there's, just so everyone at the table is appreciating what I'm looking at, there's proposed language for addition to the collective bargaining agreement that would address battalion chiefs specifically at Article 8 leaves, Article 12 wages, Article 13 promotional procedures, Article 16 miscellaneous benefits, and Article 20 out of classification pay. Okay, thanks.
That's all I have. I was hoping we would have some time for us to quit talking and listen to you.
Well, what we are giving you today is this contract.
Can't wait.
Yeah, and like I said, don't read this and kick the dog.
No.
I
like my dog.
Read this. Go in a drunken bender.
Yes.
Huh?
I just got a cat, so.
Or don't read this and drive to Tallahassee.
Yeah.
To see you.
Yeah, don't show up to Tallahassee.
Well, I think this would help. You know, again, when we talked about the MOUs that were signed, if we see something within there where you made a proposal, is there agreements that, especially, I understand a tentative agreement is still subject to change, but my feeling is that an MOU that's it. I mean, I guess, yes, it can be subject to change, but.
We didn't change any of the MOU substantively, did we?
They're not incorporated into the contract. Oh, no, you're right. So that, you're speaking to the MOU that addressed.
Yeah.
The 14-day pay cycle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
That one, yeah. was
I think
kind of
I've
included.
captured that language in that proposal as it relates to, that would be Article 10, I believe. So,
That's fine, yeah, well, I mean, we'll look at it and see where it goes.
The EMT is a little different.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but, I mean, the MOU would have been considered an amendment to the now expired labor agreement, which would become part of the status quo, but not necessarily a permanent agreement that couldn't be modified by the new agreement.
Well, that's true. I think what Nick is asking us is,
If I read something that I say, makes me want to kick the dog because you changed the language in it, because we have an existing MOU that we're operating off of, is there agreement here that essentially kind of disregard that, we'll stick with what is the existing MOU? That's what I'm asking. I understand if something is a tentative agreement, you may not have had a copy of that or something, and so, yeah,
I
we
don't
can
think
look,
that
but.
anything,
Okay.
until a draft is agreed to, anything is off the table necessarily, if that's what you're asking, is conclusive.
Okay.
But we're here
So-
to bargain in good faith.
Well, but also, and you may have a different opinion. The contract is now, expired. However, it exists and it's intact, and it's solidified until a new agreement is reached and ratified. Is that agreeable? It doesn't mean just because the 2018 is gone that this goes in the trash and we get to write an entirely new contract.
I would agree, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the terms and conditions of employment that are memorialized in that expired agreement become the status quo in the interim until we enter into a new agreement. So, yes.
Including as modified.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, sure.
Did you want to go through this, or would you rather just we can? Okay.
Did they want the exhibits?
Whatever you want to pass.
One thing I did want to address, so these would be, they're referenced in the table, and they would be Appendix C and D. And the clerk's office can speak to this. They evaluated what was attached as the wage schedule.
Appendix thing?
As appendix, I think it was Appendix C
Yeah.
in the old agreement. And some of the numbers were not accurate. So you will note, and they did add in the battalion chief rank. But you
Okay.
will note that, and I think it was some of the annual salaries were not correctly calculated based on the hourly rate. So there was no intent to change anyone's pay, but the numbers won't match the old
The old thing. Okay.
scale.
The hourly does anything.
Did you do this? That's all I want to know.
Huh?
Did you do this?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you. That's all I want to know.
Very hard on it. Harder than you should.
Of the overall. Yeah, is that possible?
Yes, I can do that.
Awesome.
I do not have, I only have a PDF of, as I mentioned, the grid, and I only have a PDF of that appendix.
Okay.
So,
I have a workable copy of
Okay.
the grid.
but I can definitely send you a Word version of this document.
Thank you.
Okay?
Very much. Okay. If you guys don't have anything else, I got 15 minutes. I know, I'd like the opportunity to hear from you. Your overall, maybe your overall feelings on what we presented today, or what your direction is, even, I guess, prior to today, what your direction is, or what you're looking to achieve in the future. Because I think that, has an impact can have an impact on labor negotiations. If we're presenting something to you that's, not in line with your overall goals for the organization, that's obviously a problem. So.
Well, I don't think that anything that you present that, let me put it this way. I think that anything that makes our community better raises all boats, in the sense that we provide better services, better safety, and we respond to critical missions in the community, are obviously something that I'm very interested in. I think the main thing is that continuing the dialogue and working together is probably going to get us to the best resolution. I think that when we kick the dog, or just assume that there's not an opportunity for negotiation or back and forth, I think that's what hurts all of us. So that's what I would say. I understand everyone's frustration that there have been a lot of changes, and there's, I lived here, got the T-shirt. I know there's a lot of changes in this community. So I will do my best to make sure that we do properly communicate and respond to what you've provided today. And maybe we can just have a really good, negotiation going forward. I don't think that we've had a bad conversation. I think we've had a good conversation. And I hope that you understand that I understand and I empathize with what you're asking for. Having been born and raised here, lived here my entire life, and some of the other experiences I've had, like with the school board and other things like that, I think that the things that you are dealing with are kind of systemic for our community. And so that also has to be taken into consideration. But I do appreciate, like I said, I think it's extremely thoughtful what you've brought. And so, I just look forward to continuing to move forward and have a conversation, but we both have to be open-minded about how we work on this. So I'll try not to close up if you try not to close up, okay?
Yeah, I don't wanna, that was aggravating last time we met, it seemed that was kind of the point that some of the people had reached, was just, we're done, and we're not
Well-
done. We can still communicate and we can talk, and, that's all I ask. I understand that the wage proposal is, very healthy. I understand that. But I think there are important things to identify the premise of it, the model itself, placing value on certain aspects. And then if we need to, if value is recognized there, then that's something to build from. And we try to work. That's all I'm looking for. And again, like I said, I feel like there were several contract violations throughout this past year and a half. Circumstances that were grievable, circumstances where maybe not necessarily agreeable, but, as far as a political stunt could have been exacerbated and, just really been a giant pain in the tail. And I feel like we, even though, I've probably had my moments in certain people's opinions, as a whole, and collectively, we have been very patient and respectful and professional of the county's circumstances, because we understand how, everybody's division is understaffed. There's more things to do in a day than there are hands to get it done. We understand that. But it seems like that's becoming a trend of, like you touched on, it's systemic throughout the entire community. At some point, you crawl from a hole. You want to change, and you work, and you begin to change things for the better. And that may take 10, 15 years, but at the same time, I think it's significant that if we agree and there's common ground, even on just on principle, then that's a foundation to start working from, and that's what I want to try to do. So.
Well, I hear you.
We appreciate you being here.
Can I ask a question, just in general about this, not to get specific? Would it be fair to say that changes were made that are in here? We're just trying to be more in line, bring things back in line with the rest of the BOCC policy?
I'm not sure what you're,
Are you talking about with the other contracts? or-
contract you
Yeah,
guys
your
proposed.
proposal. Like, I think, there's changes that I notice, that we do deviate from county policy, because we are a little different. So is it just as simple as that? You're trying to bring us back in, or?
potentially, but I'm not sure which provision that you're.
I think it's best that we just,
I
we'll
guess
review that at a different time, and
Get
when we
together
come
and
back.
come back.
Okay.
Okay,
Is there anything else you are able to share with us? Like,
Well, I
when's
sent
your
you-
100 days? Because
we
if one
sent
more of
you-
my folks
No,
ask me when the 100 days
October
is, I'm
8th.
gonna keep the dog.
October 8th, on November 14th, I'll hopefully have the opportunity to present my plan at committee of the whole to the board. Now, we did send you an MOU for the 3% increase. Okay, I'm just letting you know, we did
I want
send.
to end on a positive note, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Well, we prepared a counter.
Unfortunately, the COLA doesn't go towards the starting pay. It's always in my mind.
Yes, that's correct.
1079.
So I have a counter for you. I'm joking. You're gonna have to liven up. I don't know if the EMS folks or the transit folks are just giant sticks in the mud, or they growl at you the whole time. We joke around a lot, so you gotta lighten the mood. Throw a piece of paper or something,
Sure, the rubber band.
She's a really good baker. I'm just gonna tell y'all that, so we should ever bring cookies or
That's probably
cupcakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, next time.
Next time.
Y'all bring chili, we'll bring, how about that? Is that, I was just fixing to say, is that too stereotypical?
We
I
actually
have jambalaya
a
at the-
recipe, and we make a mean chili. Matter of fact, we'll be on the beach in December with hundreds and hundreds of firemen. We make about, 80 gallons of this stuff.
Okay. Are you saying I'm
From our-
not invited? Or are you
I think
doing
that was
it?
an invite.
No, Nick's up there going,
I'm
no.
talking to you.
He's
From
into
our
that one.
other discussions before, this is not gonna be an issue, right?
sorry, say again?
from our other discussions or concerns a few months ago, that this is not projected to be an issue.
The problems it would cause if we accept this.
The 3%?
Yeah.
Correct. You're good. It was built in to the budget.
Payroll.
Well, I know it was built in, but that don't mean what was presented was right.
Are you talking about the budget? Okay.
Yes.
We were concerned about
I
personnel.
can't accept a COLA if it's gonna mean we have to lay some people
lay
off
people off.
later in the year. That's, I wouldn't sign it then. And we were at a circumstance a few months
Where did that
ago.
ever come from?
Huh?
Where did that ever come from? It's kind of like Bigfoot. You know, you hear people talk about it, nobody's ever seen the damn thing.
You know who that came from.
No, I don't.
He's no longer here.
I do not.
He's no longer here.
Okay.
And you saw his cause. So.
Oh, it's an error, man.
And that is out of his mouth. That's not a hearsay. Just
So I will send you the Word document of the proposal, and do you want to address scheduling another
Yes,
session
ma'am.
at that time?
Absolutely.
Okay.
If you
I
just
would
make sure that
really.
You can edit that document too.
Yes, it's a Word.
Protected,
No.
like you can still edit it.
No,
Okay.
yes, yes.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. And I will add, I know it is simpler to do changes in red line. I, by hand, literally manually did underline and strike just so that the document doesn't look like, you slaughtered an animal on it, and you can read it easier. So that's the way I made the changes that are reflected in there. And I used the expired agreement and went from there and edited it.
Okay, so going forward, you want to use the format of underline and strike, underline being an addition, strike through being strike.
That's how we've always,
Yes.
what we've always done.
That's great, but if it's easier for you to just do it in red line and add to the draft, I'm okay with that too, so.
Yes, we'd have to be able to distinguish our changes from your changes.
Right.
It's gotta
know.
be a
Yes.
variation in color.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll just highlight.
That's all fine,
But if
whatever
you
works for
didn't
you
have
guys.
any changes, it would
Oh, that's not
really.
gonna
That would make it even.
That's not gonna happen, I can promise you
Yes.
that.
Let's do that and bake and eat chili.
I'll tell you what, we'll write it and you have
know,
to change
I
it.
know.
That's
You're
what
gonna
I do.
enjoy
I
this
know,
before this is
yeah.
all over with.
I like to eat.
When can we get back together?
I'm free tomorrow.
I would like to look in the future at maybe some consecutive days if need be.
More than 2 hour blocks.
Are you gonna, can you do that now? I thought you needed to.
No, can we get back?
Can we,
Because that
when I,
was part of the.
As long as you promise me it won't take a month
No.
to get back to me to schedule 2 months down the road.
today is Friday, I will send you the document next week, and I'll have dates that everybody can, that we can offer when everyone.
You guys figure out what's good for you,
But I
because it's a
will-
lot more, it's much more probable that we can meet your schedule.
I will just add, we have multiple bargaining sessions.
I don't care about
coming
them.
up,
We're more
and so
important.
It's likely that the first available date will be probably mid-December. So I just wanted, we're not trying to put you off, but it's just that we've got all these other sessions scheduled.
Sure, understand.
Yeah, that's not gonna hold the meeting.
Wait, what was your date on the chili?
He said December,
Yeah, it's in December.
so bring it
I'll
to the
bring
meeting.
it here, but
Well,
you're
also,
more
I know
welcome to
Michael
come to the same
Mattermore
show.
likes Christmas in Pensacola.
Who doesn't?
You do, you do like Christmas in Pensacola.
Come
Yeah.
in my.
Yeah, I was left with
sleigh.
5.
Yeah, with all your
Five
union
bargain.
goodies.
I was left with 5 contracts to work on, so we've been working.
Well,
to
if
get
somebody
them all
calls for a reference for the former HR director, maybe keep that in mind.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
She didn't.
The former.
All right, well, thank you all.
Yes, sir. It's good to see you again.
See you.
Michael, work on the beard for
Who
Christmas.
gets that question?
I
You
will.
said beer?